Hello everyone and welcome back to another round of Tuesday Night Legacy. Tonight we have Jeskai Stoneblade versus Enchantress. Alan is our player on the left, piloting the Jeskai Stoneblade list. The main board is actually just a blue-white Stoneblade list. All of the white cards are just for some of the powerhouse cards out of Legacy White, which is Swords to Plowshares and Prismatic End for removal, Supreme Verdict and Teferi Time Raveler for some control elements, and the only white creature that matters for this deck, Stoneforge Mystic, finding the Cauldron Complete or the Batterskull. Everything else in the main board is just blue effects, either great planeswalkers like Narset or Jace, a flashback creature from the Power Modern Past, Snapcaster Mage, and the very difficult to deal with True Name Nemesis. And everything else is just counter magic or draw, force of will, counterspell, brainstorm, and ponders. Now, all of the Jeskai, or the red, is out of the sideboard with the meltdowns to deal with the constructs, Pyroblast, red elemental blast, and of course, a card that we are seeing more and more of nowadays, Ruination, which destroys all non-basic lands. A little bit stronger than the Blood Moon effect because it just gets all of those lands out of there. So this is a tempo deck, trying to stay on top of the other deck's plan and lead them to victory with the Cauldron Complete. On the right, we have Alex piloting his Enchantress list. Now, we've had Alex on the channel before, and I called this deck a control deck, but it looks like the build he is currently running, the name of the game is Draw Cards. We have 4 Sithis, we have 4 Argothian Enchantress, 2 Enchantress's Presence, and these are all cards that allow you to draw extra cards whenever you cast an enchantment spell. You have all of these enchantments that only cost 1 in Wild Growth, Utopia Sprawl. The control cards in this list are On Thin Ice and Cast Out to be able to deal with problematic permanents that your opponent has. More Draw in Abundant Growth. And the finishers here is a 1 of Hallowed Haunting, which creates creatures whenever you cast enchantment spells that is equal to the number of spirits you control. So once you're casting enough enchantments and you're creating more spirits, those spirits grow and grow and grow. If you just have a huge board presence, you go wide, turn it sideways, and that's the game. The other 2 win conditions are the Destiny Spinner that can turn your lands into huge enchantment creatures because they are XX, where X is the number of enchantments you control. It also gives your enchantments and creatures, they can't be countered, so quite good against blue decks. And then, of course, there's Paladin class, which can give a single creature, target attacking creature, gets +1/+1, and gains double strike. So if you have one of those huge lands, they can gain double strike, and they already have trample, so that can end the game there. All of the prison elements have actually been moved to the sideboard here. We have 2 Chokes, a Doomwake Giant, Elephant Grass, Engineered Plague, Peacekeeper, Rest in Peace, Stony Silence, and Seal of Primordium. So a lot of this stuff is either forcing your opponents to not be able to attack you, or not be able to untap their lands, or basically just locking you out of the game. So game 1 is all about just kind of overwhelming the opponents with your board presence, whereas game 2 and 3 is about kind of forcing your opponent out of the game while you rebuild that board presence. We are actually starting the game here in media res. It looks like we missed the first 2 turns of the game, but not a huge deal. I can walk you through what has happened here. Basically, some lands have been played. That Paladin class got cast, and Alan had the answer in the Prismatic Ending, paying just 1 mana to get rid of that 1 CMC spell. Let's get going. So these decks are quite grindy. Alex trying to build a huge board presence, Alan trying to stay on top of that, but with all of the removal that Alex has, it's going to be tough, especially if Alan can't counter the key spells being cast here. So we see a Commune with the Spirits from Alex, going and checking the top 4 cards of his library to find an enchantment. He indeed does find one with Abundant Growth. Probably a good statistical odd that he's going to hit an enchantment with 26 of them in the deck. We see Alan deploying the True Name Nemesis on turn 3 here, getting protection from target Alex. So this creature can no longer be targeted, cannot be blocked, cannot be dealt damage by anything Alex controls. The only way to deal with this creature is out of Alex's sideboard in the form of Doomwake Giant or Engineered Plague, naming either Merfolk or Rogue in the case of the Plague, or Doomwake Giant just coming down, giving all of Alan's creatures -1/-1, since it is a non-targeted effect. We see a Utopia Sprawl coming down, naming white, so now that forest can tap for green-white. And an Enchantress's Presence tries to come down, which would be one of Alex's engines to start drawing extra cards per turn. But a Force of Will is going to say no thank you to that. Alan deploying the Stoneforge Mystic after declaring attacks with the Rogue. The Rogue presenting a 6-turn clock here if nothing else happened. But now we have Kaldra Complete in hand, so if this Stoneforge Mystic lives to next turn, can just tap it, pay 2 mana, put that Kaldra into play, and start crashing in for 8 each turn instead of 3. A Ponder is going to shuffle the deck. Alan did not like the top 3 cards of the library. Going to draw a random card. And I'm not sure if he had that Flooded Strand in hand, but a Flooded Strand comes from hand into play and passes turn. Alex with 4 mana open to him still has his land drop. Windswept Heath is going to go and get probably a forest. Yep. Alex runs all snow-covered lands. Let's see here. He's got 6 snow-covered forests and 1 snow-covered plains in the deck. This is because the Onthanize has to enchant a snow land that he controls. Wants to make sure this deck likes basics quite a bit. And so in order to run this very effective 1 mana removal spell, has to have those snow basics to back it up. So we do see the Onthanize being activated, or being deployed, I guess. Getting rid of that Stoneforge Mystic, stranding Kaldra in hand. No Force of Will from Alan. And a Paladin class coming into play. So spells now cost 1 more during your turn. So this is basically a one-sided Thalia attacks on Alex's turn, making counterspells much harder to deal with whatever Alex is going to put down. That's why he put down the Paladin class first, and then the Onthanize. And then the rest of this, whenever he just has that extra mana to drop into it, it can start to turn into a win condition from there, since it's an Anthem, and then that double striking effect that we were talking about earlier on level 3. Looks like we saw probably a Prismatic Ending. Yeah, flashed back Prismatic Ending with the Snapcaster Mage. Snapcaster targeting an instant or sorcery in your graveyard, then you can just pay for it. Getting the Stoneforge Mystic back, which allowed him to go and get another equipment out of his deck, the Batterskull being the only other target. We see on Alex's turn he deployed Sithis, his legendary creature, that was recently printed in Modern Masters 2. Basically another Argothian Enchantress effect. Get to draw whenever you cast an enchantment spell, but you also get to gain a life too. It just doesn't have Shroud. So we see Alan going to his turn, having that mana open to be able to crash in with Kaldra, but decides to Swords to Plowshares instead, getting rid of Sithis. And Alex decides that without that engine, there's just no way for him to come back, especially knowing Kaldra's going to come down next turn. Scoops it up, and we're on to game 2. An early Ponder for Alan. Nothing else, only had the 1 land to play. Back to Alex, we're seeing the Prismatic Vista 4 of. When you're running 7 basics, Prismatic Vista, of course, is a very good alternative. Much cheaper. Well, it's just, I guess it's not cheaper, but it allows you to run more fetch lands if you're already maxed out on the other fetch lands that are relevant to you. Alex running 4 Windswept Heath here. Looks like the Argothian Enchantress did make it into play. Ooh, that's a good play. So this creature did have Shroud, meaning it could not be targeted by spells or abilities. But Alan bringing in the End the Festivities which is seeing more and more legacy play. Doesn't seem like much, dealing only 1 damage to an opponent, a planeswalker, and all their creatures they control. But it can get around so many things. One of those things being Shroud. Killing that Argothian Enchantress. Alex did have another one to fire off here after playing his Commune with Spirits. I didn't see the enchantment that he revealed, so he just happened to have another Argothian Enchantress in hand. Maybe he revealed that Bayou. So next turn, Alex gets to start drawing cards. Alan with no play on turn 3. He has the mana, but I guess maybe the kind of stuff he wants to do is at instant speed. So we see a Utopia Sprawl come down. This doesn't draw extra cards by itself. That's only with Abundant Growth. Alex really thinking about what color he wants to declare. It's going to be green. So this forest is tapping for 2 green. And we're seeing a Choke. Wow, that's a great card against Alan. Drawing an extra card for the Utopia Sprawl, drawing an extra card for the Choke. Now, islands do not untap during their controller's untap step. Until Alan can deal with this card, basically his lands don't ever untap. And, you know, it's pretty easy when you have the answer in hand with the prismatic ending. The Converge, having 3 different colors, blue, white, and red, is going to get rid of that Choke right away. Seeing a Paladin class coming down, drawing an extra card for the Argothian Enchantress. If Alex has it his way, he just wants to pay 1 mana, draw extra cards. Wants more engines down, see if he can just keep drawing cards. There's a Sithis, so now he gets to draw 2 cards if he casts an enchantment. Sithis itself being an enchantment, getting to draw an extra card. So now we're drawing 3 cards here. Our Abundant Growth gets to draw a card for itself, then Sithis, then Argothian Enchantress. Only has 1 green mana open, green or black. And we're seeing a Wild Growth come down. Basically making that Plains can either tap for any color, but then it also generates an additional green when it taps. Drawing 2 cards there. Having to discard down to hand size. Had 8 cards at the end of that turn. So Alex having access to 2, 4, 5, 6 mana on his next turn. Alan with 4 mana open, 3 getting tapped, 2 blue and a white. That's going to be a Narset. That's a very good card to play against a deck that wants to draw a ton of cards. Alex is now down to only drawing 1 card each turn until he can deal with this Narset. Minusing, showing a Wear and Tear. Can destroy an artifact and an enchantment if melded. Has access to the red, so he can destroy an artifact, but does not have white right now. Cannot destroy an enchantment. Alex trying to think about what he's going to do here, because if he can't take care of Narset right now, then can't draw those cards. So he's going to plus up level 2 on the Paladin class. That's going to give +1/+1 to all creatures. That does give enough damage with attacking with Argothian Enchantress, which is usually a 0/1. Just enough to get rid of Narset. So we are back on track for drawing a ton of cards. Looking at the top 4 with Commune Spirit. Revealing Choke. 2 islands are tapped. We're going to see if Alan has access to a Force of Will right now. It's going to cost him 1 extra because of that Paladin class. So there's Choke. Draw 2 cards. Says, do you have it? Alan does not have it. Passing priority. He's thinking about it. Nope. Didn't have it. So that was just Alex discarding down to hand size. Once Enchantress starts to go, it has just so much extra card draw. You have to start discarding a ton of cards. So we did know that Alan had that Wear and Tear using the Wear side, or no, I guess the Tear side, to destroy target enchantment. No Sterling Grove from Alex this game, which would be giving all of his other enchantments Shroud to protect against stuff like that. And we know that Alex just runs 2 chokes in the deck, so no more prison for Alex unless he can somehow recur one of those chokes out of his graveyard. Seeing the Hallowed Haunting come into play. So as long as he has 7 enchantments, creatures you control have flying and vigilance. He has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now all of his creatures have flying vigilance and +1/+1 due to Paladin class. And now he's making those spirits. So unless Alan has, maybe he draws into Supreme Verdict here, that would deal with this board presence. But Alan is in trouble. Otherwise, we see a ton of action in Alex's hand. Playing his land for the turn. 1, 2, 3. It's going to be another enchantment draw spell in Enchantress's presence. We're going to crash in for... Well, they technically have vigilance. I guess Alex kind of forgot about that. They also have flying. But that is going to be 3 damage marked on the board. Alan with his Tundra. How many Tundras he got? 2 Tundras. Got quite a bit of mana himself. But he doesn't have an answer for it. So that is the end of game 2. We are on to game 3. 1-1, both players. Pretty close games. Just an island past turn. Maybe has a brainstorm at the end of turn. We're seeing a wild growth being deployed onto this basic forest. Going to be able to tap for 2 next turn. 2 mana into Stoneforge Mystic. Course grabbing Cauldron Complete. The bad boy of Stoneforge decks at the moment. Although that might change with the printing of that new Hex Parasite, whatever it's called, out of the Brothers deck, or the Brothers set, which can exile artifacts now instead of just destroy them. For 1 green mana, no big deal. Just deals with Cauldron Complete. Alright, so unfortunately that choke did not make it into play. A Force of Will said no thank you. I would like to untap my blue mana. And we're seeing Cauldron come into play here. Crash in for 5. I'm not entirely certain why it's still untapped. The Germ should be tapped. But with Alex probably not attacking this turn, I don't think it's the biggest deal. Windswept Heath, go and get a Plains. The second choke. Alex drawing all the chokes out of his deck these games. Alan does not have another Force of Will for that, but he says Cauldron Complete is coming in here. Already dealt 10 damage. Paladin class making it a little bit easier to at least resolve his spells. 1 green floating for a Sithis, and we're finally seeing that Sterling Grove come into play. Sterling Grove giving Shroud to all his other enchantments. You can also sacrifice this Sterling Grove at any time to put an enchantment on top of his deck, of his choice, out of his deck. But Cauldron, a very real threat here. Gonna drop Alex to 3 if it is not dealt with. I think Alan is under the impression that maybe Cauldron has Vigilance, mixing up some keywords with Batterskull. Not the biggest deal. There we go. That Germ token attacking. We're seeing Flighted Strand and Scalding Tarn go to the graveyard, grabbing 2 more islands. Even with choke in play, Alan's not scared. Just needs to turn this Cauldron Complete sideways 1 more time, and that's going to be game. Ooh, and that's going to be the True Name Nemesis. So now we're staring down 8 damage on the board, 3 of which cannot be dealt with in any way, shape, or form, and 5 of which is Trample Indestructible. So I think Alex needs a cast out here. We know that it is going to be It's going to get through because Alan doesn't have any mana open Paladin class in play. 4 mana cast out, gain a life, gets rid of Cauldron Complete. Still going to take 3 from the True Name Nemesis, but maybe he can get back into the game because he's going to gain that life from Sithis. So at least he'll live an extra turn. Looks like he doesn't have cast out in hand. So now he's trying to figure out, is On Thin Ice good enough? Exile target creature an opponent controls. So that is going to get rid of the Germ and keep him alive just enough. Oh, but it's on top of his deck, so he needs to cast a 1-mana spell to draw the On Thin Ice. He's staring at this Argothian Enchantress in his hand. That's not good enough because it's not an enchantment. So he needs a 2 or 1 mana enchantment. Because he can at least block Stoneforge Mystic. This Cauldron needs to get off the board, though. So what is that card? So we're going to commune with the spirits, drawing into that On Thin Ice. It's going to look at the other 3 anyways. Maybe think about it. There's that cast out. A little bit too late. He goes for the Utopia Sprawl. Casting it to draw an extra card. Needs to fire off that On Thin Ice. I guess it's to gain just a little bit more extra life. Because he knows if he has the On Thin Ice in hand, he can still get rid of that Cauldron. Decides to go for green. Oh, had an extra land drop too, so that's 3 mana. We're going to see the Enchantress come down, and the On Thin Ice is going to get rid of the token. That's going to draw him 2 extra cards, bring him up to 5. Alex still in the game. Passes the turn. Has to take the 3 damage from True Name Nemesis, but if Alan can get Sithis off the board, then he is in a prime position to take this game away. So if he's got a Swords or a Lightning Bolt, I mean, even in this case, a Tear could win him the game here. Because Sithis is an enchantment. 2 mana open. And that's going to be a prismatic ending, getting Sithis out of there, exiled. No life gained. Alex in big, big trouble now. He's got a Swords to Plowshares, but cannot target the True Name Nemesis. Got an Abundant Growth, can draw some more cards. He can't even save himself with Swords because the Enchantress has 0 power. I guess he could... He's going to draw those 2 cards with the Abundant Growth. Still doesn't look like it's saving him. He drew another Argothian Enchantress. And maybe a Wild Growth there. But couldn't dig it out. That's going to be the game. Those kinds of games are really fun to see both decks kind of operating at peak efficiency, and going all the way to game 3 is always a good time, and Alan was just able to get some unanswerable threats in play to the point that Alex just couldn't dig himself out of the hole, and Jeskai Stoneblade is going to take it this time. Thanks for watching. Please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel if you want to see more of this content in the future. We have a bunch more of these on the channel, so go check out our backlog to see some other premium content. If you're curious about a deck you saw played here, the deck lists are always in the description of the video below. Thanks as always to Spellhold Games for letting us play at their store, and we'll see you next time for some more Magic content on Tuesday Night Legacy. Bye!